Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a really common, yet, rarely talked about emotional experience. I'm talking about the quiet, hidden pain of always feeling like the backup friend. If you've ever felt like you're just kind of living your social life in the shadows, always waiting for your turn, let me tell you, you are absolutely not alone. We're going to unpack the actual science and psychology behind this feeling so we can understand exactly why it happens. So, have you ever felt like the second option? You probably know the exact feeling I'm talking about. You're never really the person people choose first. Instead, you're the one they text when, their initial plans fall through. You aren't ignored completely, which honestly almost makes it more confusing, right? But you're never truly, undeniably chosen. It's a very specific and, frankly, a really painful social space to occupy.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because if this dynamic sounds familiar, I need you to know it's not just a random string of bad luck. And no, you aren't somehow fundamentally flawed. Actually, psychology tells us that being repeatedly overlooked actively rewires how your brain processes relationships, trust, and even your own sense of value. Your brain literally develops a very specific, rare set of survival traits just to handle this environment.
Because repeatedly being the backup, it creates a highly specific psychological profile. People who grow up feeling like a second choice tend to develop three really distinct traits. They become highly observant, deeply loyal, and quietly guarded. It completely alters how your mind operates whenever you're in a social setting. So over the next few minutes, we're going to walk through the 5 hidden signs that indicate you might have developed this exact profile.
Sign number 1, hyper-vigilance to rejection.
We need to start by completely reframing what you've probably always considered your emotional weaknesses. Because as you'll see, these are actually highly logical, brain-based defense mechanisms. When you're constantly overlooked, your brain adapts. It enters this state called rejection sensitivity. And here's a wild fact. Your brain actually processes social rejection using the exact same neural pathways as physical pain, literally. So to protect you, your brain becomes hyper-alert to any signs you might be unwanted. It's constantly scanning the room, trying to predict rejection before it happens, just to soften the blow, so it doesn't hurt quite as much when it inevitably hits.
Now, from the outside looking in, people might tell you you're just, overreacting. You might catch a slightly delayed text, a tiny, almost invisible shift in someone's tone of voice, or realize a group plan happened without you. To outsiders, your reaction feels completely disproportionate. But the psychological reality? It's totally different. This is a learned survival pattern. Your mind is actively trying to protect you. So no, you aren't crazy. You're just guarded.
Moving on to sign number 2, the earned value trap.
This brings us to a really fascinating, but an incredibly exhausting psychological trap. It forces people who feel unchosen to just constantly overcompensate in their relationships. See, because you don't feel naturally chosen just for being you, you start feeling like you have to somehow earn your place in people's lives. And this creates a really painful core belief, the idea that being valued isn't a given, it's a reward for being useful. You become that friend who does the most, gives the most, and invests the absolute most emotionally, just desperately trying to prove your worth.
And this brilliantly illustrates what happens next. Underneath all that extra effort is a massive imbalance that keeps you anchored in highly unequal relationships. You end up putting in like 90% of the emotional effort, while the other person, they're maybe giving 10%. You literally exhaust yourself trying to be indispensable, just hoping, praying that if you do enough, they won't overlook you next time.
Which leads us to sign number 3, the security paradox.
Now, you might be wondering, what happens when the backup friend is actually chosen? Well, the reality is incredibly confusing. Even when someone finally does choose you, it doesn't fully register in your brain. Instead of just feeling secure and happy, there's this quiet, lingering anxiety. You're constantly sitting there, just waiting for the other shoe to drop. You fully expect the other person to eventually wake up, realize they made a huge mistake, and choose someone else. You just simply can't let your guard down.
This paradox is actually directly linked to something called low relational self-worth. When you've been the backup option for so long, the damage to your self-worth is profound. Your brain literally struggles to believe that you are enough to be consistently valued. So what does it do? Instead of relaxing into a deep, loving connection, your brain finds the love deeply suspicious. It keeps you on high alert, cautious, always preparing for the exact moment that connection begins to fade.
Let's look at sign number 4, forced emotional self-reliance.
Let's see how this builds, because over time, dealing with this constant uncertainty forces you to adapt in a very specific way. You eventually learn to depend on one person and one person only, yourself. This builds a really fascinating split between how you appear and how you actually feel. Externally, you project this super independent, lone wolf personality. You handle all your problems alone, you never ask for help. But internally? Psychologically, this isn't just natural independence, it's pure emotional self-protection. It's built entirely on the deep-seated expectation that support simply won't be there when you need it. You've become your own first choice because, well, you just aren't sure you'll ever be anyone else's.
And finally, sign number 5, the loyalty trap.
This examines a profound double-edged sword that really defines the second-choice personality. When a person who feels like a backup finally finds someone who consistently chooses them, they become deeply, deeply loyal, often significantly more loyal than your average person. Why is that? Because you intimately understand the agonizing pain of being overlooked. You know that shadow so well, so you make absolutely sure that the people you care about never ever have to feel it.
Now, what's really interesting here is the dark side of this exact trait. While offering that kind of deep, unmatched loyalty to your friends and partners is genuinely beautiful, the flip side is dangerous. Because you value being chosen so highly, you will often hold on to people way, way longer than you should. You might find yourself clinging to unhealthy, one-sided, or even downright toxic connections simply out of this deep, paralyzing fear that if you let go, you'll go right back to being the person no one chooses.
The psychological shift, choosing yourself.
As we near the end of our explainer, we really need to shift gears. We've spent time building deep understanding, but now it's time to move toward direct empowerment. Listen, being the second choice in the past does not mean you are less valuable. Your brain trained you to survive in the shadows, and in doing so, it actually gifted you with some incredible, resilient strengths. It made you highly observant of other people's feelings. It made you deeply self-reliant and capable, and it made you more unshakably loyal than most people could ever hope to be. These are not flaws, my friend. These are hard-won strengths.
So the crucial point is this massive, empowering realization you need to break this lifelong cycle. You cannot control being someone else's first choice, but you can decide to stop being your own last choice. Once you understand the hidden psychological patterns driving your behavior, you gain the absolute power to change them. You can take all that 90% effort you've been pouring into others and finally start pouring it into yourself.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. Have you spent your life as the backup friend, or have you finally started choosing yourself? I would absolutely love to hear your story. Let us know how you're taking back your power. And hey, if you want to keep understanding the hidden psychology of your behavior and see the patterns that most people miss, make sure to subscribe to see more of our explainers. Thanks so much for learning with me today. And remember, start choosing yourself.